Rockhold, head boys basketball coach at Trotwood, Madison. I'll be coaching on the boys side of Team Flight World. As far as coaching experience, I've been at Trotwood now 10 years as the head coach. I was the varsity assistant for 3 years prior to that. It really started at Greenview High School, a small Division III school, where I was the head coach there for 8 years before leaving and coming to Trotwood. I was the assistant at Greenview for 4 years before I took that head coaching job. I've coached multiple AAU teams with Dayton Metro. So all in all, I'm about 19 years into this realm of coaching. So I'm probably going to share in some of the same feelings that other coaches, but I was super excited when Chris reached out and talked about the opportunity. But really that excitement came from something that Chris and I have always talked about over the summers of working with him in his Chris Wright camp. He always held it at Trotwood. He always did a great job of working with the kids in the community. And so my excitement level was about being able to take our young men and young women somewhere that I know they've never been before and allow them to experience things that they've never experienced before. So my genuine excitement came for those young players and the opportunity that they'll have. It was less about basketball for me, and I've always told Chris that his impact is gonna be far wider outside of basketball. Just basketball's the tool that he's chose to use, and it's the tool we're going to use with these young men and young women. But really, that's all it is the tool to show them something bigger. So I'm super excited about it. I think the easy first part is intense, definitely intense. But I think in order to coach with that intense, under that intense frame all of the time, you have to show love, and those kids don't hear what you're saying, whether you're yelling it or whispering it, if they don't feel that you love them and they don't feel that they're a part of something bigger than them, which is our program. So in developing the culture that we've developed, there's a lot of tough moments, there's a lot of tough love in our locker room and on our floor, but at the end of the day, it's all built on a foundation of just loving each other and me being a servant leader. When it's all said and done, as a head coach in high school basketball, we're the bus driver, the guidance counselor, sometimes the teacher, even if we're not so good at that subject, but we're definitely sometimes a parent, and we're the chef because we're getting meals for them. I mean, we do a little bit of everything. And so I think all that plays into my style, that when you're doing those things, you can give tough love, you can show tough love because they get the big picture of it. So my advice to upcoming coaches is know who you are. I think that sometimes we fail when we're setting goals and setting tasks because we forget to look in the mirror and realize who we are. And we try to teach or coach from a perspective that really isn't ours. And I really believe that had more young coaches and even more young professionals and really knew who they were before moving forward, they would make different decisions and just kind of move in a different way. And one thing for me is, like, I know who I am, and I know that I'm not the coach who's going to sit in the chair for 32 minutes and watch the game go by and make small adjustments. I'm not that person. And so for me to try to portray that will only come across as fake to our young men. And so know who you are. And I think the second thing, and I know this has been mentioned already, but the second thing is utilize the tools and the gifts of those around you. You're never going to be right all the time. You're never going to see everything that you want to see or be able to see. It's just not going to happen. And so utilize those tools. And for me, I think it's especially big to use those around us because I'm not a teacher. I'm not in the building all day. So I need to rely on those coaches that I have on staff to make sure we're on point throughout the day and in the classroom and in the lunchroom, make sure that our young men are on point. And so you really have to trust, and you've got to give up control. And I think even if anyone's watched our team play, for 5 minutes, you realize that as a head coach, in the way we play, you have to give up a lot of control. We're not calling sets every possession. We're not waiting around to see how the game is played out. We're moving and in attack mode all the time. So I have to give up control to those 5 guys who are on the floor at that time a lot. And that means I have to listen to them. So as a young coach coming in, don't forget to listen to your players. These players, more than probably any other time in this sport, are educated. They play more games. They play far more games than guys my age played growing up when you factor in AAU and open runs and just all their opportunities. And they're right a lot. So listen to those young men and young women as you're coaching them, and I think that you'll be able to mold who you are into who those young men and young women are, and build the culture that fits the entire program, as opposed to just coming in with a system and saying this is our system. And we've certainly seen that fail at times. So really know who those young people are and know who yourself. So, well, we're definitely looking for the best team, not the best individual player, not the best athlete, not the guy who runs the fastest or jumps the highest, albeit those skills are going to be necessary for the type of competition we're going to play. We're really looking for folks to be able to be a complete player. Just having a niche, if you're really good at it, can help us, but being a complete player means that you can show leadership on the floor, you can show leadership off the floor, you're willing to play the game and make someone else better. Even if you're the best scorer, if that night is not your night to score, what else are you bringing to the table? So as we're having our tryouts, no doubt I'm going to be looking for guys who fit with other guys, and we're going to be watching things that are happening when they're not playing 5-on-5. So who are they kind of hanging around off to the side, and what are those conversations like? Can they communicate with each other? We're going to be looking for those intangibles. And of course, you have to be able to play the game. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to dribble, pass, and shoot. And so those are skills that we'll be looking for as well. If there's any advice I can give to the young men, is come in with the attitude of, I have to work and earn this. This is a prize. This is something that is a great goal to shoot for, and it's not just another AAU game. It's not just another situation where I get to play. This is a situation where you get to play and have a lifelong experience that will impact you as a player, and honestly impact those that come into contact with you for years to come. So we want them to see big picture and really know why we're at tryouts that day and what that looks like. But I think you just have to, as a player, you just have to bring it. Like, show up, be ready to compete. I think, for me, the guys that are in our program, we're always looking for competitiveness. We've lost kids along the way that may have been really good players and end up being really good players somewhere else, but they weren't willing to compete every single drill, every single day. And that's what we're looking for in these young men that are trying out, is just that competitive spirit. Failure to communicate. I think these young men and young women who are trying out, they have to learn that they've got to communicate on the floor, they've got to communicate off the floor. I think the other piece that we're looking at is, how do they respond when they make a mistake? Do they have the ability to move on to the next play, the next drill, the next possession? Or are they still worried about missing that shot or turning the ball over? What does that next play look like for them? And there's a mentality behind that that some folks don't have. But if you've got that next play, that next possession on your mind, then you're able to overcome adversity, and that's really what we're looking for. And so I think you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to move on to the next play once you've made a mistake. And I think last but not least, and I've already mentioned it, but I think if you lack a competitive spirit, you're going to play against people who have it, and you're going to find yourself on the short end of that fight. And so, if you're coming in just trying to go through the motions and not be competitive, you're not gonna finish the way you'd like to. I think really just take a good look in the mirror and be critical of self, but also be positive of self. What did I do well? What can I improve on? And if I'm not sure, be humble enough to ask. Be humble enough to step off the court and ask the coaches that are there, that are making the decisions. So really bring yourself to that point where you can say, okay, I didn't achieve what I wanted to. Let me ask people who will give me good advice. But at the end of the day, having that next opportunity and realizing the big picture, you certainly can have a meaningful impact down the road. And when it's all said and done, what we're doing doesn't make or break your high school basketball career. So you can respond in a positive way from it. And I think that's what we're trying to teach, even outside of basketball, is how do you respond when it doesn't go your way? I think a couple of things. Honestly, being a part of being part of a program that won the first state championship in Trotwood basketball history is a big deal. And just being a part of that, and there's so many great players who have come through there, Chris included. There's so many great coaches who have coached there. But at the end of the day, as a program, we were able to achieve that for the very first time. And I think even to piggyback off of that, being able to provide an opportunity for the young men in our program to do well enough on the court and well enough in the classroom to obtain scholarships. Every year that I've been there, we've had someone go play college basketball at some level, and that's rewarding. It's rewarding as a coach. It's rewarding as a mentor to these young men. But again, just providing them with that forum. And you know, I'm never gonna act like taking our teams to the Final Four and being a part of that process isn't important. And I'm darn sure not gonna act like it's all work and no fun. It's a lot of fun. And so those are certainly achievements that we want for ourselves, but more importantly, I think all of us in this industry want that for our kids. We really want them to see what it's like to play on the biggest stage in our state. For a lot of kids, they don't get the chance to play again. And so if you can have that experience and be a part of that with them, it's very fulfilling. Sure, well, I think a lot goes into it, and I think first and foremost, we have experience in it. You know, we were down 18 to Moeller, who had one of Moeller's best teams ever back in 2014, and down 18 with 4 minutes to go and won that game to make our first state trip. But you know, you always have experience to pull from. But in that particular game against Purcell, they did everything right. You know, they broke our pressure early. They got open looks and knocked them down. We looked like we were a step slow on every rotation, and you know, offensively, we never got anything going. And so the adjustments at halftime were just that. We just talked about how we wanted to defend differently. They'd hit a couple of shots. We were given too much help. Our rotations were really bad. Our defensive rotations, especially on the backside after we trapped, were really bad. And so we had to do a better job with that. And one of the terms that we utilize a lot is we always want to bully the ball. And we weren't doing that. We were allowing the ball to dominate our defense. They brought it up at will early on. And so once we really started bullying the ball and forcing it to the sidelines or forcing it to the corners we wanted, we knew they were in trouble. We knew we were going to eventually make shots. Carl Blanton was going to make shots. We knew that you know, we had guys who could score. Scoring's never been an issue with this particular team we had a year ago. And so we just had to get some stops. So it was really about consistent stops. And I think we went the first 7 possessions and got stops in the third quarter, got an and one out of it, knocked down a 3. Keontae Hughley hit a big 3. And we really just started rolling from then. And, you know, sometimes in basketball, it's just about that momentum. And I do think that, you know, our kids got a little bit of a wake-up call when they looked up at that scoreboard and thought, well, this might be it. So, you know, really at halftime, they're believe it or not, a lot of people think, oh, coach, you must have really yelled at them and really just undressed them in there. And we did just the opposite. We came in very positive. We came into the locker room as a staff confident. Like, we're okay. We're fine. You get a few stops, you make a run. You know, the way we play, and offensively we want to play with a shot clock in our head. Defensively, we want you to think there's a shot clock. There's plenty of time on that scoreboard. So we really just made adjustments to our pressure. Offensively, we didn't change anything. Just attacked. We stopped settling for jump shots and attacked them. So it was a great game. We were down by 20 in the second quarter, and I know we ended up winning by 11, but it really felt like more than 11. Purcell was just beat. They were just tired. They were walking on almost every possession. You know, we were able to spread them out, and so it was a fun win for us. I think the challenge to that is then you were getting ready to play, obviously, a rival school in Thurgood, a team that was playing very well. You had a dogfight with them early in the year, and so all the hype was on that game. And we were practicing the night before that game. We just finished practicing when we got the call that we weren't going to play due to the pandemic. And I will tell you, and I've said this to a lot of people, that was one of the toughest things that I've had to communicate to young men about from a leadership perspective, because you couldn't explain it. There's no history. There's nothing that you can lean on. You couldn't recall a book that you'd read or you know, anything. You couldn't recall a sermon you'd heard in church that led you to this type of leadership. So you were winging it. And it got even harder when you had to make the call that we're not playing at all. It was one thing not to play that game, because at that point OHSA was suspending boys games. They weren't saying it was over yet. And so the really hard part was now we're separated from our young men. We're not seeing them every day, and I've got to make that phone call, which honestly started out as a text with most of our guys, because if you call them first, they don't answer. So it was a lot of texting and putting in our group messages, hey, we need to talk, please answer when I call, we need to talk. But trying to have a conversation about something that honestly they couldn't see or feel yet, right? They didn't know what COVID-19 was other than what they'd heard it was. And so trying to explain why this thing, this pandemic is keeping you from reaching a goal that for our seniors you've worked for the last 8-10 years of your life was really hard. And I don't know that I did a great job with it. I just know that I tried to over communicate about it. Tried to give them information as I got it. There were times I was sending texts and I was screenshotting things from the news and sending to them, just hoping they would understand that this is about life. It's not about basketball. And yes, basketball got taken away from us, but we really had to try to learn bigger lessons. And I don't know how well I did at it, but I know I communicated with them a ton. But it was tough. It was tough to see those seniors. And, for us, we didn't even have the chance for months to get back in front of our underclassmen, to even talk about using as a lesson face-to-face. We were separated. School was shut down, gyms were shut down. We were communicating by phone and at that point trying to help them figure out what a Zoom meeting was, right?
All right.
I mean, I think it's easy for me. I have an amazing daughter who's on her way to med school. She played college soccer. She's a great student and probably a better person than I've managed to be over my time. So I feel like I've had a part in that. And she's someone who volunteers a lot. She's been clear and focused on her goals, and there's no question, and it's not even close, that's my greatest achievement, is just being a parent who's had an opportunity to raise an amazing girl like that. Absolutely, parenting and coaching goes one the same, and I would say if you've had any coaches that you've talked to and they tell you that it doesn't, they're probably not going to be in it very long. We do very little basketball, and I'm sure most of the coaches can tell you that. Our free time is when we're at practice and we're creating for our young people, and we're helping them learn to execute. But I know I've mentioned this before. We're everything to them. We're the bus drivers. We're their schedulers. We're their counselors, both guidance and personal counselors. And so if you're not doing all of those things, you're probably not really reaching down into what it really means to be a high school coach. And it's just part of it, and it's what you sign up for. But we do very little basketball. I mean, the games come and go and practices come and go, but when it's all said and done, do our young men have meals for the night? Do they have a way home? Are they okay in school? We may make some bad basketball decisions, but at the end of the day, we know that we're making other decisions out of love that are far more important as to who we subbed in or who we didn't play the minutes they thought we should have. We know that even if it is that young man, we're going to take him home that night because he needs a ride. We're going to make sure he eats that night because he's hungry. We're going to make sure if parents are gone that he's got a place to go. So it definitely overlaps, and if it doesn't, you're not going to be in this business long. No way. Absolutely nothing. I knew when Chris presented it to us, I was like, where? We're gonna do what? And my first thought, and Chris could tell you this, my first thought and the first thing I said was, I'm super excited because our young men are gonna get to do something they've never done before. And just the idea of having them apply for and obtain a passport is gonna be an experience in and of itself for them. So I didn't know anything about it, and I just know that it's an opportunity, and that's how I see this entire venture as an opportunity for these young men and young women. So it could be anywhere. Switzerland's great, but it could be anywhere as long as we're providing an opportunity for growth within these young people. So I've been fortunate that I was part of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and we did mission trips. So I've actually been to the Philippines. I'll use air quotes and say play, but really the idea behind that is providing a mission and we get an opportunity to play. I've also played in Guadalajara, Mexico on a missions trip. So I have been out of the country, and I'm excited to go again. And I'm really excited to be on the end of the mentor and not the person that's playing and putting in all that hard work to play. I think the first thing that I would share with them is truly take it all in. I think we have a tendency to act like we know more than we know at times. I think we have a tendency to say, oh, we don't want to be touristy, we want to be really cool about this, especially for our young men and young women. It's okay to have the phones out and take lots of pictures. It's okay to really just take it in. And I think the other advice that I would give is see and understand the big picture of what brought you here. And again, basketball is the tool that did that, but you're representing so much more than basketball when you're on that stage, and not just on the stage of the court, but when you go out to eat, when you're traveling to and from the gyms or arenas that we're going to play in. So you're representing yourself, your family, you're representing Flight World, you're representing your entire country. And that's something to A, be proud of, but B, it's something that can be a responsibility that is tough to burden if you don't put it in those perspectives. So I think those would be the two pieces of advice I could give folks.